Welcome, everybody, to KC Happy Hour, episode number 55. I am your host, Xander Clemens. Alongside me, my trusty sidekick, and Aaron Hackmeister, ready to bring you another week of the show. We've got a couple of guests joining us here tonight to talk, a little bit of armchair football, if you want to call it. Ryan Norberg joins the show, sporting his brand new Norberg Nation hat that will be available sometime soon. Ryan's been on an 8-week stretch right before we got on here that you've been going?
No,
Or in
I'm
the
going
middle
to
of
be
one?
on an 8-week stretch. It's been 4, so
My
yeah.
goodness.
So in the middle of it.
Yeah, and Chris Wehrheim, talk about it in the middle of it. It's currently, I don't even know where you are exactly, Chris. You want to let us know where exactly you're driving to right now? I know you landed in somewhere.
Yeah, if you can hear me, I'm lost in Toronto. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm lost in Toronto somewhere. I'm on my way to my hotel. So we'll see if I make it.
Well, that gives us time at least to go over the news here from the week. There was some regional racing going on over the weekend. The WK race up at Cincinnati pulled about 100 entries. Another back-to-back event for the guys up there. Sean Bailiff and the crew at TKG, and the MCC Cincinnati racetrack with their second touring series event in a row. They've had their club series kind of come back this year. They've been doing a lot of good stuff up there. Of course, we talked about it. The U.S. Pro Kart Series is headed to Cincinnati in 2023. There was also racing with the KPX Karting Championship down in the Southwest. The California and Nevada-based championship had about an 80 entry race. So regional racing was keeping us busy. And then, of course, the Sunshine State Karting Challenge at Orlando Kart Center was where Ryan and I were at over the weekend. It had 168 or 69 entries, nearly 170. So massive turnout down there. There were a few big names. Jeremy Fletcher was there running, Tyler McIntyre and Jack Jeffers you might recognize from the IAME Senior stuff that we promote all the time. But good racing in Orlando. In fact, it was probably one of the better races that we haven't streamed, at least that I've seen this year, the X30 Senior Main on Sunday. It was like just a wet enough racetrack. Ryan, I know you were in and out, not working with you were working with juniors, right? You weren't working with any seniors. Did you get to catch that senior race on Sunday afternoon?
I didn't. It started to rain, so I left. I was done. I worked really hard. I had 4 drivers, so I was like, I had no time in between each session, and so the day ended for me. And I was like, you know what? It's starting to rain. I'm getting on my little electric scooter and I'm getting out of here.
You were
but I heard it was really
clown,
good,
man.
Which kind of sucks because it's like the one time I didn't watch the race. Everybody was telling me about it the next day. So
it was nuts, man. It We've talked a lot on the show. We talk about it all the time, all these different events throughout the country. We stream a handful. We don't stream everything. We stream a handful of the regional series. We don't stream all of them. The SSKC is growing in Florida. Florida's been a hotbed for the sport for a long time. That series has kind of taken up the mantle of Florida State Championship. It was like perfect track conditions for what you'd want out of like an entertaining rain race, because the rain came, and in typical Florida fashion, it was still hot after, so the track didn't have a lot of standing water. So guys were able to kind of run low, clip the inside curb, and run the bottom through the corners. And then it was still just wet enough that if you ran around the outside, you had more grip than the inside lane. So you had like multi-group dirt racing with slide jobs pretty much all. I think we ran 11 or 12 laps in the main with the shortened rain race between McIntyre, Jeremy, and Jack, and they were passing back and forth. I mean, every single lap, it was awesome. So definitely missed out on, even though, Princess can't get wet, but it was good. It was good. The racing over there was good. We've got a couple more regional events here. Ryan says he's on an 8-week stretch. We've got the Stars Championship Series in a week and a half up in New Jersey, the kind of third, or I guess you could say third or fourth, really the third touring series behind the U.S. Pro Kart Series, behind the SCUSA Pro Tour that's slowly coming up. They're looking at, I would bet, probably at least 150 entries up at New Jersey Motorsports Park over there. I forgot, the Rotax East Trophy event was going on last weekend at OVRP. I think that wrapped up. They gave out a few tickets. But this weekend, 2 big events. Or one big event for sure is the Tri-C Carters Saturday. I think it's a Saturday night shootout. The night shootout that they've got, they do once a year up at in the Pacific Northwest, has 160 entries, another cash money race. Super cool that they're putting on. We actually talked to those guys a little bit about trying to get up to the Northeast to put on a stream for it. I know we got a lot of listeners and viewers that follow us up from that region and comment and give us a lot of love. And trust me, guys, we were working on it. As most of you guys know, I'm based out here in Texas along with the other half of Kart Chaser with Trevor. This is actually his desk over here behind me. But for us, for then a lot of our crew, even to bring local help out there, it's still a whole lot just to get our core group up to that region. And the flights are crazy right now. Everything's expensive. And we've had a busy year, but we're working on some stuff. We'd love to get up there next year. It's awesome. Kudos to you guys for those good numbers. We'll be reporting on it with what we know from entries, from winners, of course, at the bottom of the screen when you guys get done with the race next week. But best of luck to everybody racing up there. And with that out of the way, let's cover the little bit of news that we got that just dropped this morning, and that was the U.S. Pro Kart Series announcing that they will be running the standard national layout at Newcastle Motorsports Park with the updated start-finish line, I believe. At least that's the way that we have the track map here. But going back to what we've run and what we really haven't touched much since pre-pandemic. Ryan, I know you were stoked about this announcement to go back the normal way that we've gone for years and years and years. Everybody got tired of, and now we've had enough time off. Seems like everybody's happy about this announcement.
Yeah, of course. I mean, who doesn't like that layout? It's like a staple in American karting. I mean, it's one of the most fun layouts I've had. I mean, I've had great memories running the track that way, from like Robopalm all the way back to like the Pro Tour when Kirkwood was racing, and me and Garrison were running down the straightaway. Like there's some awesome races I've had going that direction. And yeah, it's been frustrating that they don't run it hardly ever. I mean, it's been a while since I've driven that layout, and having the ability to like pass down into 4, that's like an awesome passing zone, and it's super fun. And yeah, I'm happy they're going back to it. I mean, it's really good racing, and normally the racing stays pretty close as well. So yeah, I'm happy they're going back.
Chris, before we get into a lot more stuff, do you got any good old war stories from your time running Newcastle with the standard layout? Because that track's been around to see even before a lot of people, but it's coming up on 20 years almost here. What do you got for the standard?
Yeah, I mean, I was.
If we can, we'll see if that Toronto internet will let him here. It looked like I thought he was good, so I was hoping we could send it to him, but we may need to give him a minute. He'll be at his hotel pretty soon. But yeah, back to the standard layout for those guys. We'll cut to Chris here. Let's see. It looks like it's a little better. All right.
Am I back?
I think you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry. Man,
you're
this
good.
is a disaster. So no, what I was saying is, no, I think we needed a break from the original layout. The original layout is awesome. I remember racing back when there was no curbs at all, and not even really at the apexes. They had some weird like bricks at the apexes, so it made it really difficult and interesting. But it is time for the classic to come back, and like Ryan said, that turn 4 passing zone is one of the best ones out there. So even that whole turn 4 and the double right into the double left, there's so many passes you can do and be creative through there. It'll be interesting to see who has the experience and who doesn't through there.
Yeah, so that event obviously is the next one we've got up on the major pro national calendar. You've got that one. Then we get into the final 3 majors of the year. The IAMA USA Grand National Championship starting to heat up with what should be some major purse money. We already talked last week. Big time money going into Supernats 25. I know that some of our I've seen a little more. I don't know if it's just because I'm not going to say it's because we've talked about it, but whether it is or it isn't, or the fact that we've had more races in the last little bit start to kind of push towards, in the press release of Supernats, the big push of the IAMA Grands of having some bigger cash payouts. There's been some naysayers on Facebook saying they don't want payouts for sprint karting because it's in dirt karting, that's all they can do to get any kind of entries. I think it's great if it's handled the right way. I think these races are handling it the right way. We look back at Grands last year. We had awesome moments there. We don't care the fact that Ryan dominated on Sunday because they all wrecked in turn number 1. What was memorable for everybody was Ryan and Connor getting into it in the Saturday X30 shootout, crashing for the win and giving us a lot of great content over there. That was awesome. We love
Why
that.
do you zoom in on me?
I just,
I haven't got anything to say about it.
Nothing at all.
Crashing, zoom in. Yeah, crash. Yeah.
But yeah, that race will be cool. The USPKS finale at Newcastle should be huge. They've been over 200 plus, touching 300 at half the races this year, so that one will be big. And we don't have a whole lot of other stuff that we'll get to here before the break. So we'll take our first commercial break a little bit on the early side here with this one to give us some time to hopefully give Chris time to figure out his way around downtown Toronto, as, of course, the Canadian National Championships are up this weekend as well, which should be a pretty big turnout. I think I read with Cody Schindel and CKN, they've got over 260 entries or something like that. It's a massive, massive amount. It's because they've got the Briggs classes, Rotax, and Rock classes. But either way you look at it, Grids are averaging upper teens, pushing into the late 20s. So full grids pretty much across the board for the Canadian Grands, and up at a beautiful, beautiful racetrack at Mosport as well. So that's all coming that we'll be getting set to talk about. But we've got a lot in the U.S. that we want to talk about tonight, and that's why we got Mr. X30 and recently crowned 5-time SCUSA Pro Tour champ, 6-time X30 Pro champ Ryan here, and Chris Wehrheim with Offset, who is off an X30 Masters win, but more importantly has been in tune with the industry when we like to talk about industry talk. We might have a special guest or two join us a little bit later in the show, but we've got a lot to talk about, and that's been a big point for a lot of the last few U.S. national races is kind of the X30 numbers for the first time in a long time, senior and junior. Junior had already been a little bit light in the last couple of years. For the first time, I think I can remember, the entry count was under 30 at both the SCUSA Summer Nats, and then just got above it, US PKS Road America and SCUSA Salt Lake City in Utah. So there's reasons for that. There's other questions to talk about, and we like to, again, play a little bit of armchair quarterback on this show when the weeks get a little bit slow. So keep all that in mind, but send in any comments you got, any gripes you have from national racing in general, the X30 stuff. We'll talk about it when we get back. We'll get these guys' thoughts. And again, a lot of the show, as much as Chris might be bouncing around, some of the ideas he thought would be good to bring to light. So we'll let him, like I said, figure out his way around downtown Toronto and hopefully find a hotel to get into for the night, at least soon. But in the meantime, guys, we'll take our first commercial break. We'll be right back. Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com.
At New Gen Motorsport, we're committed to using our 10-plus years of experience and knowledge to help grow the sport of karting from the bottom up. Our goal is to make karting more accessible to the average person, lessening the financial burden of getting started, and making the learning curve as small as possible. Our passion is training and developing drivers, mechanics, and engineers to not only be the best they can be in karting, but also for careers in the much larger world of professional motorsports. A strong foundation makes building bigger easier. Let us be that foundation for your karting and motorsports career. Be part of the new generation of motorsport. Contact us today to schedule your test day, arrive and drive race event, or to inquire about how we can help get you started in your own new gen racing kart.
Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including IAMI and ROC divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amar Sonata at srp-engines.com. KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com. All right, everybody, welcome back to KC Happy Hour, episode number 55. So as we bring everybody back in, Chris, it looks like your connection might be good enough that we can at least kind of start a couple of the points that we had kind of together. And so, again, we were talking the X30 classes getting a little bit smaller. We've had everybody else on the show to talk a little bit about it. What's been kind of what you've picked up on? What are your thoughts on starting at least from the top? The KA classes have been strong all year, but again, numbers, don't lie. At the end of the day, the entry count's just been a little bit lower for the last 3 majors we've gone to. whether it's guys dropping out midseason or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to see what Ryan has to say as well. I think we're starting, and this mainly comes from just word around. You hear parents talk, you hear drivers talk, but I feel like we're at this point where, because these pro series are running both an amateur class and a pro category, you have a lot of parents that maybe get frustrated at the X30, whether or not they don't think they can compete against certain individuals or teams, or they feel like it's more expensive than KA. I feel like we're not really losing people in karting. We're just losing people in the X30 category, and they're going down to KA. And in my opinion, I think we're kind of doing a disservice to these national series where, the X30 category should be the premier category. It's almost to the point where maybe KA shouldn't even be at a national championship tour of any sort, right? Like, it should be the baseline of regional and club level racing with maybe 2 or 3 big single events. But I think it is drawing people away from the X30 category.
Ryan, what's your take?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that quite a bit. I think one thing that I've always said, everybody talks in the paddock, they're like, back in, 2017, there were 64 guys starting the X30 final at Newcastle. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But like, it's basically the same 64 kids just split between 2 classes now. So you have a few of them stay on the X30. So it's around the same amount of people. And I think it's like Chris said, I don't think we're losing people. But I will say that people are moving down into KA, because I wouldn't say because of people like me, but it is more difficult. I mean, the class is becoming a lot more professional because the money is on the line. It is becoming an actual pro division. And I would say, 2 years ago, you couldn't name a paid driver in the field, and now there's 4 or 5 in X30 right now. And so it's definitely a pro class now. It's becoming more of a pro class. But I think the question is kind of like Chris said, where it's like, should it only be limited to regional, and should X30 only be limited to national level stuff? Should it be kind of like a KZ where it's only ran at the Pro Tour stuff? You know what I mean? Where it's only ran at the highest level and not at a lower level. But I think it's something that I know I've spoken about it a little bit, but I think the way to keep it that way is to push the money towards the pro level, and to make a distinction between the amateur class and the pro class. And I think you've got to tell some of these pro drivers that are out there racing in the KA class that you're above that level and you need to race with the pro drivers. And I think that's another discussion of trying to retain drivers in the sport and retain the drivers in X30. But I think there should be a limit to, if you're like myself, I shouldn't go race KA. It's like Kyle Busch going down a nationwide series. You know what I mean? He needs to say, I mean, granted there's rules, but he's not allowed to compete in the championship. You know what I mean? There's rules for people that do it.
Yeah. And that's something we've talked about a little bit too, right? Like, if you look at, and to be fair, to the top guys in X30, right? Marian's not going and running it. PSL's not putting Pedro Hiltbrand running KA. But, we've got some guys in that class that, without question, I think maybe they don't want to spend the money to run at the top of the X30, but Brandon Lemke running KA senior, Race Liberante, Alex Stanfield's a second-year senior, right? And you could maybe make the argument that some of the, the rookie, really the top of the KA senior classes, you have a handful of regional guys just starting to get rolling towards, putting podium finishes together, putting wins together, getting wins on a bigger stage than where they're at, and racing guys from across the country. And then you've got the 14 and 15-year-old rookies in senior that are double dipping to get more seat time running in senior classes. And usually by year 2, they don't do it anymore, And I mean, credit to Connor Zilish last year. I mean, they obviously started the year on a whole other level. He won at the SCUSA Winter Series at his first start on the second day. He dominated at the rock classes, so there was nothing they had to prove already. They started at the very top of the game. But that's what those, classes are. Now, like Ryan said, I think the money needs to, if you're going to distinguish it, right, we look at the money's gone up to compete. The money's gone up, or it's at least stayed for, the top, but the money doesn't go deep enough. Even the SCUSA Supernats purse, which maybe, again, you can make an argument at all these events that only the winner should come away as a big-time winner. But you've got 4 to 5 paid guys in X30, and that's exactly kind of how I've tried to say that my theory is with the X30 class or with the pay classes in general. 4 to 5 guys think they can win the $5,000 to win the weekend. So you're going to get the top 5 drawn off that 5K. Will you get more guys drawn beyond that? Well, no, because they don't think that they can run with the top guys. But if if we have something that's decent down to 10th or so, then it could go. As for the the comments already, I mean, obviously, first of all, we've got your biggest fan right here, Ryan, tuning in. Good old Franco, as we let Chris fix his internet on out. And I think we'll have 1 or 2 more guests joining in. There he goes. He's getting back in now. There's no question, right? When you have someone dominate, guys can't figure it out. Can't figure a way to go. I wanted to bring this up here, and I'll bring this up. This is one of my points that I had kind of to talk about the show that I think some of our viewers, if you guys watched along, I had a comment even come in about the claim rule, right? And we've seen all kinds of different tech procedures try to come in and do something about. Obviously, everyone thinks that you've got a massive power advantage, Ryan. That's no secret. We've joked about it on this show. You guys, whenever you win in motorsports, motor is the first half of the word. That is the easy go-to as to thinking why someone's dominant. So, claim rule, the customer claim rule was in place, and we've talked a little bit. So to this episode, I'm going to stop saying that. I'm just going to keep going over stuff we've talked about and just make it so this is all in one place. The customer claim rule was a big selling point when we got going, especially SCUSA brought it in and was adamant about it. When we go back about 5, 7, 8 years ago, and SCUSA was just really getting the X30 class to boom. We're talking 60, 70 entries. This pre-KA era in 2015, 2016. Ryan's debut year on the Pro Tour, 2017. Numbers were massive, and there was somewhere in that range very quickly a customer claim rule put in $500 above the engine retail, which is $3,200. So you'd buy it at $3,600 or $3,700 in tech. You could go right up there, and for $500 more than a box stock motor, which is what was supposed to be the standard price to buy a built or tuned motor from any standard engine builder, I could go buy Ryan's motor right out of tech. Boom, ready to go onto my go-kart for the next race. Very quickly, with the price being that low to claim people's motors and people wanting to put more than that much money into a motor, mainly just because that only makes up for, a handful of hours. If that really is a good motor, you spend a lot of hours perfecting that thing, even if you don't, factor in buying a bunch and putting together a good one. So parents would go and they'd send someone they knew, maybe not their mechanic, maybe not even their teammate, maybe just somebody in the paddock with the money, cash in hand, to go claim their motor before an actual competitor would claim it, and then they would go give that motor right on back to them as soon as the race was over, and the cash would change back hands, and then the claim rule kind of went away. The series claim rule came in response to that. Now the series can take, and they kind of have always had rules like this where they could take any part that they wanted to for whatever reason. They could tech any part for whatever reason out of it. We saw Ryan's motors get claimed at NOLA. We saw Jeremy's KA get claimed at NOLA. Micro Swift for Troy Ferguson get claimed at NOLA. On a bigger scale, and the reason I bring this up, I talk a lot about, motocross is a great kind of mirror of like a step up to where we are. Where our pro nationals or pro classes, those are not supercross, as much as people in the industry want to believe that we are at that or could make our events like that. We're still a step below on the pyramid. We are at amateur level national racing. And so if you look at the amateur moto nationals, which is the Loretta Lynn's national that just went down last weekend, big drama came out of it. Many people here might know of Haley Deegan and working her way up the NASCAR ranks. Brian Deegan, obviously major freestyle rider, was kind of the opposite one. Yes, exactly, right here, the Deegan deal. So Hayden Deegan, Brian's son, who's on the motocross track, wins the amateur motocross nationals, gets his bike claimed, and now there's this major drama because it was claimed by a competitor, a kid who had also, I think, won one of the nationals. His kid's name is Brennan, and I forget his last name. But I was watching some more stuff on this, kind of leading into this show to talk about claim rule. Now, here's a lot of he said and she said in it, but basically the skinny of it is what the kid's trying to say. Not only did the kid not get the bike, the series promoter took the kid into a trailer with the kid without his dad because they just caught him. In the moment as he put in the money to claim the bike. The promoter of the event, or the AMA guy, and Brian Deegan himself sat across on the other end of the table. So the kid had to face Brian Deegan eye to eye of the guy his bike he was claiming and try to make a case. And apparently there's been beef going on between the two kids. They've had like 1 or 2 run-ins on the amateur national circuit already, kind of crashing together. So it'd be no different, Ryan, in your case, in the few rivalries we can go back on, right? Or let's say like Duke Medjin from SCUSA Winter Series. I mean, you and Connor Zillish was never really bad in any way, but it would be the similar type deal from you guys last year, or in this case this year, maybe Jeremy Fletcher, someone else that was kind of a foil to you, claiming your bike, and then they get pitted, not pitted, but they get pulled into a room as they're trying to claim your engine, and they have to sit down and talk to you and talk to Raleigh and talk to Alex across the way, which basically then from there, all the he said, she said stuff about the story now has this kid saying that he's getting blackballed, his dealer who was sponsoring him getting blackballed by Yamaha because that he was on a Yamaha bike. Hayden Deegan is a Yamaha factory guy. Yamaha factory stiff arming the dealer saying, don't do this. The dealer saying they're going to pull my Yamaha dealership if you try to go through with claiming the bike, and ultimately drops the kid from all of his sponsorship. I don't think any of that could happen, but on a different note here, what also happens on the customer claim rule, which people like to talk about, it's like looked down upon. There's kind of like this unspoken rule that you don't claim someone else's equipment out of respect. So I don't know, Chris, now that your internet's good, what do you think on like claim rules and this unspoken rule that like the top guys shouldn't be claiming each other's stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, if the rule, I follow motocross quite a bit, so I'm a little bit aware of what's going on at the Loretta situation. Look, if the rule is there and it's available, it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, should there be some mutual respect where you shouldn't just be claiming some guy's engine because you feel, a certain way? But let's be honest, if I was racing against Ryan right now, I'd be claiming that engine. And it has nothing to do with whether or not I respect that they put a bunch of time in or not, which obviously they put probably in more time than anyone else out there. But if the rule's available and the series says that it's okay for you to do that, we're 3/4 of the way into the season, yeah, I'm probably going to claim it, And the way the AMA does it, it's a little bit different than how we had it. It's 2x what like the retail price of any bike out would be. And it is similar where it's not the category that they were racing in. It wasn't supposed to be like a factory built engine.
Oh, he just won. He's right. They're not supposed to have $100,000 bikes in his class. Everyone's supposed to be running on kind of like 20K bikes. But we'll let Chris come back and have someone a little more experienced than me kind of explain that deal a little bit, because I'm still a little inept. There you go. Are you back now, Chris? Do we got you?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So you were saying that class wasn't supposed to have a factory bike in it.
Yeah. So it'd be no different than like essentially, in X30 where, yes, we have engine builders, but you're not really supposed to be doing anything to the engine. So it is a little similar. But the kid, I guess, and he did an interview where he said at the beginning of the year, before the season really started, he was planning on claiming someone's bike later in the year, and it was probably going to be a factory-backed rider. So it is kind of no different than what we see. I think the claim rule in general, not what we need. I think it's kind of dumb because you do create these like beefs in these situations. I really think we need to go back in more of a direction, just letting people these engine builders start working on the engines a little bit more. I think that's actually going to create a little bit more parity and take away some of this, oh, these guys are doing this and that to the engines when they probably aren't. So I think we actually need to move the opposite direction.
Well, while we bring in, let me get on that here. Ryan, what would your take be if someone claimed your motor right now if we had that customer claim roll back in?
I mean, I don't care because I know we have other engines that are just as fast, so it doesn't bother me so much. But I know the team wouldn't like it because they put a lot of time and energy and money into it. In my opinion, I mean, the the competitor claim rule, I'm not a huge fan of, because that's like telling Mercedes, you got to give your engine that they've spent a lot of money figuring out stuff and spent a lot of time working on to figure it out. I mean, if the series wants to take it and take it off the market, that's another thing. I mean, as much as I don't like it, if the series wants to take it like they have and just get rid of it altogether, then that's another way of doing it, because you're taking away what people think might just be one good engine. But I don't like the whole just giving it to another competitor, because you're just, you could be ruining your, changing secrets, that you've figured out. You spend a lot of time, and somebody's just going to spend $500 basically to figure out exactly what you're doing. And honestly, I've heard people before that when they know they're getting claimed, they might put a different engine on, or, might ruin the engine intentionally. So it does create just kind of a weird scenario where it's like you're either damned at the super NAS when you go to race because people are going to know what you do, or you just take the L and lose the championship because you're just going to ruin your engine so nobody can figure it out. To me, the claim rule is a little different. I do kind of like what Chris is saying, where you open things up a little bit more. I mean, it is kind of like Mercedes right now, where we have figured out something that works really well within the regulations. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, my power is the same as everybody else, because it's not. We work really hard to make sure it is better than everybody else. I mean, we've had conversations where I'm like, the engine's just as good as everybody else's on the racetrack, and Raleigh's looked at me dead in the eyes and says, that's not acceptable. It should be better. And so that's kind of our standard. And so I think when you run a spec series, it leads to stuff like that, where a team can figure it out first, and then you get a big advantage. So I mean, I'm interested to the opening up the engines a little bit, and letting the engine builders have more control over what they want to do. I'm also not an engine guy, so that's just me speaking. If that seems like kind of a fair thing. I know in Europe it's a lot more open than it is here. A lot of the carburetors, I mean, in tech, they pull for a heat race, they pull the head off the engine, and I mean, they go all the way inside for a heat race. So I mean, it's a lot more open over there. And I mean, you still have teams that have good stuff, but apparently it's more fair over there. So I mean, it's part of having a spec series. It's, if somebody figures out something that's just, it could be something super small, and it just makes a big difference. I mean, that's why sometimes at the Rotax Grand Finals, you have drivers that are a lot faster, and it's everything spec. But if you find one thing that's just that little edge on everybody, you're going to be a lot faster. And so, yeah, I know I'd be interested to hear what Chris, I mean, that whole idea and what that would actually mean, opening it up. But I'm sure that would be, I mean, I'm not against that. I mean, I like seeing the creativity of all the engine builders and what they can actually put out there.
Well, while we bring that in, let's bring in the other guest that we had work his way on in. Tony, your connection, somehow, you are not in a car, and you look like you've got a worse connection than Chris. So can you explain what it is you've got going on over there at some brick building?
Well, it's the balcony in Ybor City, where I'm placed home for a while.
How is your home internet worse than your internet, like, when you're at a hotel, Tony? I mean, my goodness.
It says 5G and it's got all the bars.
I don't believe that for a second. Chris, so yeah, it's funny seeing some of the comments come in here. We've had a few people kind of go the same thing here as what you're saying. So opening the engines up, in Europe, and you can elaborate. I think it was either you or someone else that talked to us about it. I mean, it's to the point that even the non-factory back teams, but if they're a big team like Ward Racing, they'll have different specific parts that they've got for their motors that they put on, whether they run factory Vortex or whatever for the OK and KZs. Like the teams themselves even go into it, right?
Yeah, on the road of what kind of OK and OKJ is, where
man, every time he gets going on
right when he's getting good,
we just lose him, man. Here, you know what?
My internet's bad, dude. That guy just cut off.
Now your thing finally got good, Tony. I'll give you credit. So Tony,
his internet, then it's bogging everything down. It's his fault, not mine.
I guess. All right, Tony. I don't know how much of the show you've been able to tune into or listen, but we're getting into it, obviously, talking tonight on, we've seen the X30 numbers go down. We've seen the K numbers stay good, or at least some guys kind of jump over there that maybe shouldn't be in it. It's a two-prong system, but we've got big drivers in it. Where we're at right now is talking about open racing. opening stuff up. If you had the creative sandbox as a promoter, Tony, what would you do? Is your vote to open the stuff up a little more, let the engine builders play a little more?
Well, for sure. I mean, that, opening it up just puts it in a different ball game. And if you have a certain spec that you're allowed to be in or run within reason, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way it's always been with the other series before it became like true spec racing. So the problem with spec racing is you end up always trying to be on edge, on the upper side of everything, and then you just have to keep going through more stuff and more parts and buying more things, as well as just continuing doing it every year. Whereas if it's opened up a little bit, you have that ability to be within range of what you're allowed to do, and yeah, it becomes the engine builder at that point.
Chris, let's see if we can give you a shot here this time. I think we'll pray that it'll stay for you here. But you said you don't want to go down the you don't want to go down the OK route. You kind of want to do stuff here.
I just don't think. I mean, I'd love to see the new OK National OKN category come to North America, but I just don't think we need to be building our own parts. We don't need someone that has infinite resources to go make their own rod or piston. I think we need to use OEM parts, but yeah, maybe you can cut the piston a little bit. Maybe you can work on the head, do a little bit of porting. If you open it up a little bit there and have just a set of regulations that an engine builder can work towards, when you have an engine that isn't the best, you can massage it a little bit. You can find that little bit. Right now it's just, and this is where kind of to circle back a little bit, people think KA racing is cheaper than X30. In all reality, it might be a little bit more expensive, to be honest. People are buying just as many engines in KA. I know someone just bought 15 new KAs to essentially build two rocket ships. If you open it up, you're not doing that. You're maybe buying 3 or 4. You're not buying 15 to try to build 2 engines, because that's really all it is. You're trying to piece parts together, find the best parts. Obviously, there's some tricks with toning and some other things, but it is really just who can put the best parts together.
So that was one note that I had that I was a little bit curious about, right? Because you're right. People on the surface, K does one set less of tires. On a club level, the motors go more because they, RPMs aren't there. They're meant to be a more robust motor that's a little bit slower, but it doesn't go as far.
No, I mean, we see. I mean, I can run an X30 at a club level just as long as a KA, and I would argue that I see performance drop in a KA, depending on the circuit. If you're at GoPro, you can probably get a little bit more because you're lugging it. But if you're at a track where you're spinning it a little bit more, no, I mean, you're running the same RPMs you are in an X30 in a piston port engine. I mean, you're getting wear and tear on the engine. Exactly, Tony. So you're getting wear and tear. And in all honesty, I think a lot of the engine builders are doing more rebuilds on a KA more regularly than an X30. But if you're racing nationally, you're getting the engines built all the time for races. You're not showing up with a, used engine to a big national race if you're really serious. So all that, it's the same cost.
Fair enough. So then let's go back, right? I mean, Tony, Chris, you guys have been in this sport for a good while. Maybe you can give us a better answer than Ryan or myself will know, because all we've known since both of us have come up at ages of 23 and 22 and 24 is spec racing at the national level, whether it's Rotax, Rock, or IAME. How did we get to this point? What was the push to go to spec racing? Did Rotax start it off? What's got us to where we're only doing spec classes on the U.S. national stage nowadays?
Well, I think it was a little bit of an overcorrection when ICA started to have some of their issues, which honestly had nothing to do with the engines. It had to do with the series that was running it. And
we might have lost
on us without telling people, and some other issues that happened. And then Rotax came along and got really big, and I think it was a little bit of an overcorrection. And we didn't really have spec racing that much, and maybe tag got out of hand with all the other engines, and people, hey, we need to really kind of narrow this down a little bit. And when big companies like Miami and Road Tax can throw a lot of money at series, same thing with tires. I mean, I've talked to series owners before of why they run only one tire in the series. They say, look, the amount of money we get from these tire manufacturers, we'd be stupid not to do that. So I think a lot of it is just that. It's a money thing. Same thing why these pro series probably won't get rid of KA in their pro series, because it's entry fees, it's tire sales, it's money. It may not be for the betterment of the sport in a way, but they need that money to survive. And you got to look at the bottom dollar sometimes. And I think that's where we've kind of gone, is in that direction.
Tony, you got anything more to add on to that? How we ended up on all these Spec series?
No, I mean, he's 100% correct. In the end, it's the way it all ended up. And for me, it was more in the road tax. Road tax really kind of was the originator of it all, right? They supplied the tires, the motors, and all that stuff came from the same importer. Well, in the end, as everything started to progress, I mean, it's in the same boat. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just, it's the answer to your question. Yes, that's exactly how it's there. It's, if that's a series and all the series run the same engine, the same tire, same, whatever, as long as it all just keeps going in line that way, it's in the end now, if, you run a Yami engine with an MG tire, and you could run 3 different series for, a normal guy or a dad that wants to go race with his kid. You would rather go race that series. I mean, look at, for that matter, WK has always tried to bounce in between all this stuff, and they figured out, oh, well, we're going to do this motor. Oh, that didn't work. Well, let's do this tire. That didn't work. We'll do this engine with this tire. Maybe that'll work. Well, that didn't work either. In the end, it goes back into the same thing. You could race 4 series with the same tire, but if all that stuff comes, from the same importer, then it just, it just kind of, it's monkey see monkey, like it just follows suit. There's not, you can't get away from it because there's, the options are very limited. The only option you have is, let's say for instance, the KZ comes back or, let's say this OKM thing pops off, who knows? I mean, but it goes that way because if that's your only option, what are you going to do? I mean, yeah, there's rock, but look at that. That's a Spec series too. All the engines and tires come from the same, importer, but that importer also has, they own a go-kart factory. So, and they race 4 times a year. So how many times do you see that, that series go off? So, from the regional point and the national point, if it makes it easier to do it that way, that's kind of how we ended up here because everybody runs it the same way, So there's not much of an option there, unless people start to, maybe push something a little bit different or add something a little bit different, and then you'll start to see things cycle around. But the tire is the biggest thing in the end. I mean, the tire is kind of what runs this whole deal, So it's difficult.
Let's go back. So that Chris brought up a good point, and it is true, right? The engines, the tires. I mean, they put in a lot of money to these series to be title sponsors.
Yep.
And the series, not only are reliant, but really dependent on the income from those kinds of sponsorships. How did let's go back. I mean, Stars at Karting, right? Was Stars at Karting in the later years when it had ICA? Was that a Spec tire or still an open tire series too? Do you remember?
At the end of it, Chris will be able to. But at the end of it, it was a Spec tire, if I remember correctly. The engines were open on the rules, and there was multiple manufacturers, but the tire was Bridgestone at the end. It was many years before that it was a different tire.
And so how did these series survive prior to it, right? Because the tracks are only getting a minimal cut nowadays, and granted, maybe rental karting wasn't as big back in the 90s, but I have to imagine it was still pretty decent in the 2000s, maybe not to the level of revenue that it is now. These tracks want to have a good amount of money coming in from these events. But if these series are so dependent on it, I mean, did we have a lot more volunteers? Was the staffing a lot less at a 1990s or early 2000s go-kart race where the series could get away with being open? I mean,
in the 2000s, though, from what I remember, no, the staffing, you never really felt that there was any less staffing, but you did have a lot more sponsors. I mean, Snap-on for Stars at the time, I mean, that's a major tool company. That was a sponsorship, a major sponsor, actually. There was a title sponsor. There was, sponsored classes. There were, sponsored. I mean, there were so many avenues to it. And then these teams that would bring in motors or for that matter, even tires, but mainly engines, most of that was the importer ship, but also ran a race team at the same time. So everybody kind of, I don't know, it was more of a hodgepodge than it is now, for sure.
Well, we'll take that and we'll move forward a little bit here. We'll take one commercial break and come back with some more, ladies and gents here. Send in any questions you got. We'll have Chris jump back on here as soon as he gets checked into his hotel room and ping Ryan and Aaron a little bit more on the second and final half of the show. Stick with us here. We'll be right back. Line has steadily made progress since its inception in October 2021. On top of servicing the Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana areas with products from Kart chassis, Tillotson karts and engines, Miami, Briggs, Honda, and more, they're now promoting race events as well throughout the mid and coastal South region at NOLA Motorsports Park and Finish Line Performance Karting in Biloxi, Mississippi. Races are already set for the fall of 2022. September 3rd, October 22nd, and November 12th at NOLA Motorsports Park, and 2 dates, September 10th and October 15th at Finish Line Performance Karting. Driver Line is set to finish this year strong. KC Happy Hour is presented by Precision Performance Karting. PPK is the exclusive South Florida distributor for the American-made Coyote Zenith kart racing chassis. PPK is offering trackside support at all the Cup Kart South Division events, the CKNA majors, including the Spring Nats and the Grand Nats, the Sunshine State Karting Challenge, and a number of club events in the Southeast. New here for 2022 and in partnership with Brandon Jarscrack Racing, PPK is also offering full arrive and drive opportunities in the junior, senior, Briggs 206 classes at the popular Stars Championship Series and the GoPro Motorplex Karting Challenge events. The same professionally prepared kart and motor package has propelled Brandon to victories at Winter Nationals and the Monticello Divisional in 2022 are available to you. In addition to the Coyote line of racing chassis, Precision Performance Karting is also a distributor for Odenthal Racing products, Hilliard clutches, Vega tires, and Greyhound racing seats. Check out Precision Performance Karting on Facebook and Instagram or email them at ppkartingfl@gmail.com. From 4-stroke to 100cc to 125cc and beyond, Technokart USA has a winning option for you. Based out of Des Plaines, Illinois, Technokart USA offers both chassis designed to win in all divisions of North American karting and a top-level race support program at the U.S. Pro Kart Series, Route 66 Sprint Series, select Cup Karts North America races, and both the Rock Vegas and SCUSA Super Nationals. Podiums, wins, and championships are waiting for you whenever you're ready to get on a Technokart. For more information, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechnokartUSA. So while we settle in here for the last little bit of our show that we'll have tonight, which will have a little bit more in it, Ryan, we'll hit a couple of the viewer questions that came in, and I've answered this question in the past here before, but I'd like you to see if you could outline it quickly from your end. If you were to lay it all out for a brand new family that wanted to run at a privateer for a national event, let's say it's at the pro level, class or what have you, right? This is from Patrick McKinney saying, Ryan or Xander, how much does it cost to race at the pro level on a national event weekend? It's a huge cost to a father-son or father-daughter to try and compete with a pro team. Also wants to let you know his daughter's a big fan.
Awesome. Thank you for subscribing. On the other side of it, I mean, the first year I did the pro tour, I was a privateer. I don't know the exact numbers, but I mean, obviously you're going through five sets of tires for four or five sets of tires for the weekend. So you're already at, $1,200 there. You've got travel. So however far you are from the series, you got to add that in. Entry fees, another $1,200. You got fuel. I mean, you're probably looking at a weekend costing like $6,000. That's with a mechanic, and that's privateer. So it's not cheap if you want to compete against the major guys, because obviously that counts with the engine rental, a good engine rental, and you need two of those for the weekend. So it's definitely not the cheapest thing. And that's why when I did it on the privateer level, I never raced the pro stuff until I was ready to do it. That was a decision my dad and I made. That's the advice I give a lot of people that are not at that level yet. It's like until you're ready to compete and you think it's worth the money, then do it. Because at least for me and my dad at the time, it wasn't really something that we could take lightly. It was like something we had to be prepared for. And so the one year we did it, we made sure we had tire sponsors, we had a chassis sponsor, we had an engine sponsor, we had a mechanic who was helping us out. Willis was giving me a good deal. So it was a lot of things put together, because it is definitely not the cheapest thing to do a privateer option on the national level.
Yeah, Tony, you might be able to answer this question. Do you know what you guys are charging over at Speed Concepts with the Speed Lab motors for an engine rental for the weekend for an X30? Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
Due to me, dude. It wasn't me.
All right.
That is definitely not my department. I don't know. I know they're on par with everyone else. I don't know the exact number, but I don't imagine it's much different than most people.
Well, to break down that 6K that Ryan kind of let, so let's say if you do rent 2 engines, you might get a bit of a deal on it, but most guys normally would like to charge what a full rebuild would be so they can freshen that motor either prior to or put that money towards freshening it when you're done with it, and kind of keep the cycle on going. So that's going to be anywhere in the ballpark of normally $1,000 to $1,500 for an X30, and probably something similar, probably $700 to $1,000 for a K if I can remember the rebuild pricing, and it hasn't gone up terribly much from the last couple of years I ran, which is about 3-4 years ago. So if you're looking at, you could say anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 for 2 engine rentals for the weekend. If you do 2, some of the builders sometimes, if you wanted to get away and shoestring it with 1, you could do 1. And if it was a really bad motor, if your engine builder is nice to you, they might swap you out with a different rental. But let's say go to Ryan's pace, right? If you're comparing to Ryan, you're comparing to the other guys at the top stuff, they're going to have at least 2 motors, a practice motor for early in the weekend to save time on the race motor, maybe even a backup race motor ready to go. So arguably up to 3. But let's say it's 2, $2,500 to $3,000 on motors alone. Tires are normally $225 to $250 a set. And you're going to run, again, if you run the way that our weekends are right now, it's a 4-day race weekend. Not saying, let's say you're not going to test the weekend before. Maybe it's at a track nearby you where you've already got laps. So your Thursday practice, you'll start on hopefully a used set of tires if you can find one. Not hard to find because we burn tires a whole lot here in the States. So you could go to your dumpster or ask someone for a used set of tires, start the weekend, but you want to put on a new set midway through Thursday. Ryan, you guys know, put it on what? The practice 3, practice 4, one of the last 2 of the day, right?
Yeah. Well, you do normally, like the going wisdom is every day, second session. And then normally on official days, either the second to last session or the last session. So it would be Thursday, because Thursday's practice, you do second session. Then on Friday, you do second session again, the last session. And then maybe you save a new set, an extra one for because you're starting to wear out the tires for Sunday warm up. You're starting to run out the life of the tire, so it's not a great test for qualifying on Sunday. So maybe you put them on Sunday morning, or you do an extra set on Thursday.
So that right there at 225 and some change, you're looking at $1,500 to $2,000 on tires. Your entry fee, Ryan says $1,200. Well, that $1,200 would normally be if it were including the tires. That's the way the series are. They're normally about a $500 entry fee for the weekend. And normally it's about $75 to $100 for Thursday practice. And then pit passes are normally I think for USPKS it's not included. I think it's included in the SCUSA entry fee. $500 for entry, $65 for the driver band for the weekend, $65 for your band for the weekend as the parent. So another $120 in pit passes and maybe a $25 on Thursday. So $150 in passes, $500 in entry. That's $650 right there. You got your $2,000 in tires, $3,000 in engine rental. Then not it's and then you probably have $500 in consumables over the couple hundred in consumables if you don't crash throughout the weekend. So you could easily get, if you're renting engines, and if you're not, you're rebuilding them to go into it. So the cost is roughly the same, whether you own your own, at least 5 or 6 as a privateer, and that's not included on the mechanic side. And then of course your team fees anywhere from $2,500 up to as high as maybe 7 to 8, depending which organization you go with. So it's up there, but like Ryan said, something to wait on for sure.
Make sure you're ready, because you can burn yourself out pretty quick.
Exactly. It's $8 to $10,000 no matter what you look at, because if you factor in travel and everything else, no matter what, it's that number. I mean, it's $8,000 to $10,000 every single time.
Tony, this is a good question put in by Howie Idelson. And honestly, Howie, obviously we're not promoters, so I can't say I'm the best one to answer this, but this is a great question that I think a lot of people in the industry have. And I'll read it off for our audio listeners at home. If the series are taking so much money from the tire, from the fuel manufacturers, why do we still have to pay full retail for tires and for fuel? Tony, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, I don't even know why that's a question, to be honest. I mean, you go into a Ford dealership and buy an F-150 for what Ford makes it for. I mean, if somebody puts out the money to buy this stuff, you're gonna have to pay full retail. It all comes from somebody. Whoever brings it in, whoever imports it, is the guy that's ponying up the money to have it in stock when you need it. So at that moment, why wouldn't he charge you full retail? I mean, it's MSRP. He pays for the building it's housed in. They pay for, like the crazy part is a lot of people don't even realize, like, when stuff gets imported over here, it's not like, oh, you just call somebody and it gets put in the box and you get it. By the time it gets there, I mean, if the guy importing it, he's responsible for all the duty fees, all the taxes. He's responsible for the broker. He's responsible for, if it gets stuck, then he's got to figure out how to get it through, maybe call a different broker. I mean, there's a lot to the whole thing. I mean, you import anything into the country, or into any country for that matter, clothing is number one. People don't even realize, why don't certain manufacturers carry clothing? Man, you have to go through hoops just to get clothing here. You got to tell them where the thread count's from, where it's made, the country of origin. Like, there's a lot of stuff to it. So yeah, to charge retail, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to be any different, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, what's your ETA on your merchandise up there?
Exactly. Exactly. But I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand that, like, I mean, these teams and all these guys, when they do get the order in from OTK, I mean, a lot of these teams have already put in over $100,000, few $100,000 order that they're just hoping that gets here in time and that the people, buy it back from them. I mean, even with the tires, I mean, per weekend, I mean, RPG will put in, $40,000-$50,000 order on tires for the team, and then try and sell those out. And he's just hoping if you show up and you buy your tires, and you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of risks that a lot of these guys take that we don't really, think about it, but they're willing to drop that money because they're hoping you're going to come and pay. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what they're paying or what they're getting them for. I mean, Eric's a smart businessman, so I know he's making his money off of it. He's not going to not make money off of it.
Yeah, but dude, a tire at the whole, and that's something that a lot of people don't even realize too. Everybody always wants a deal on tires or this, that, and the other. But I mean, honestly, the money that a retailer will make for a set of tires, like, if you really look at it and you sell 4 or 5 sets of tires, you almost have to, like, look at yourself in the mirror and go, man, I'm not really sure that $200 or $300 that I just made is worth it out of all the shit that you had to deal with. Sorry. But, just to sell those 5 sets of tires or whatever. I mean, and then having to make sure that they're out of the same batch or they're as fresh as the ones that just got there. Or maybe you didn't sell. Dude, there's a lot involved in it, man. I mean, it's not just here's a set of tires.
Well, let's carry that. We'll go to what I think would be our final question here, because I don't know if we'll get Chris back as he's trying to check in and probably a little bit of a line over in Toronto. But this is a good one here, I think, to close off what we've got on the show. And from Kevin Coleman, with rising numbers, when does KA become a pro class? So I'm going to wait on my part to the very end. Tony, you're already giggling a little bit at this one. What do you think?
Dude, the intention of what that engine was supposed to be and what it was, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, actually. That, there's so many things you can't say, but I don't think it should be a pro class. I think it's a class that's a stepping stone to, we had a kid for this, an 11-year-old kid that's never raced a K kart in his life. He's in Mini, and we ran him this weekend, and there's no way that if he were to race that thing not that he did a good job, but, the race pace, different story, but you don't expect him to go race against, I don't know. I don't even know who runs up front in that class. Or, whoever it may be. You're not going to have him go run against Fletch or that. I mean, he's only 11 years old. Like, it's, there's a big – it's like putting a micro kid and a mini kid all in the same class, and he's never raced mini, but then in the end you expect him to compete against, the kid that runs up front every weekend. It's I don't know. I'm not sure you can make a pro class. It's not what it's really meant to do.
Ryan?
But yeah, I mean, I don't think K is a pro class. I think that the whole point of it, like Tony said, was to be a stepping stone to the pro class. I think that the thing that gets mistaken is that sometimes we don't make a big enough distinction between what would be the semi-pro class and the pro class. The money is definitely getting better behind the pro class. Something that I've mentioned before, maybe not on this podcast, but I would like to take some of that money that we give to the other support classes and maybe just do prizes like we used to do, and then take that money and do more of like a constructors championship and kind of give it back to the teams so that they can maybe support other drivers coming up, so that they can push drivers to come into the pro class, give them something to where, maybe give a team, if they win the constructors championship, money towards entry fees for just the pro class, or something to where we incentivize a pro class a little bit more. As well, I think, like I said before, there needs to be somewhat of a licensing system to where if you're going to race the semi-pro class, that's your class for the year. You can't be double dipping, or, once you get to a certain level, that stays for the entry level guys, and you're supposed to race the pro level stuff. Because, like we've been mentioning, it's not a price thing. I think a lot of drivers just do it because it's more competitive, obviously, and it's a lot closer racing, and sometimes it's more fun. But that's our distinction. LO206 would be the pro class because there's like 80 guys at a nationals for LO206. So you know what I mean? It's not the same thing.
And it's the same lap time as a mini. That's definitely should be a pro class.
Are they slower than a mini?
Yeah, exactly.
They are.
Yes, yeah. I don't know.
It'd be tough to find them slower than a mini, but man, we're gonna get those guys on our butts again.
No.
I know.
But you're right. No, you're right.
I
You're all
like
right.
the 206. I like the 206. It's
all-
a good
it's all-
program
we're
to
good,
get
we're
people
good.
in the
No,
car
no,
thing,
no.
and
Wait, let me
it's
clarify.
fun to race.
There is a pro 206 at the CCAN. There is a pro class. The senior class is the pro class at that series. But I'm saying, if you're doing a SCUSA style series where there is 2 strokes and 4 strokes, this 2 strokes are the pro division. It's nothing against 206 drivers, or because there are some like good 206 drivers. I mean, Colin Warren, you got some of these guys that they'll wheel it out there, and they're just as good as any other 2-stroke guy. So yeah, there is a distinction though.
I think the biggest thing about going back onto this, right? So like where Kevin's going with this is, and this has been a common theme. I think this is a good point to touch on here on this show while we've got the platform for it, right? Because there's been stirs in the paddock about, all right, X30 numbers are going down, which they're not like at 0. They're still really good. Like Ryan said, if anything, the top's gotten harder, or at least hasn't gotten any easier, but the back of the field isn't there and maybe has jumped over, and a few guys that are good enough and shouldn't be running and maybe farming down in those slower speed classes, whether it's 206 or KA. And that's not knocking the packages. Like Ryan said, there's great drivers in there that should have the wherewithal to be able to get up and run the X30 stuff. But if we just run away for the problems we have in X30 because the entries aren't as high, and then all of a sudden we take all that and we say K is now the pro class, the same exact issue is going to happen, because at the end of the day, it's a slightly slower motor, but it's the same concept. It's a spec series with, if you put the payout there, if Ryan goes there, if all the expertise at RPG, at Speed Concepts, at Speed Lab, at every other motor, which not that those guys, don't focus on those engines. There is a focus there, but if you take that spotlight class away and make a new spotlight class, we're just replacing it and not actually solving the real problem here. And the real problem here is that, we need that upper level to save the levels below it on the pyramid. If it just keeps dropping down, we're just going to keep going down the pyramid till we part pick KAs. Then KA is going to go away. We're going to have KA 206. Then we're going to part pick 206 or Tillotson or whatever, until eventually we're left with no motors and a bunch of grumpy people. The idea here is that the open classes obviously give the builders room to go. When you get to a certain point, like Chris said, like Tony said, like Ryan said, like we've said here before, when you buy 15 motors, it's no longer a cheaper option to run that spec class. It's cheaper when you buy a couple motors that cost a little more to put money into them, but at least you can make those motors good versus just having to buy a bunch and split them out. The point system would be good. And then I like your idea, Ryan, actually, with the constructors of the teams kind of getting some money to go in, because I want to segue this a little bit as well. I know I said this would be our last comment, but I wanted to get this out too.
Good. This is good. Keep going.
I had this comment with Jeremy Fletcher's grandpa, right? And where they're at, he's one of the guys selected, I think, for the Mazda Spec MX-5 scholarship shootout. There's the Toyota 86 series that's coming in the works next year. All these kids that are finally getting to go in X30, we saw this with Connor last year. It's a no end game for them, and they had to spend ungodly amounts of money even in the support classes coming up. to get to where they're at, to the point now where maybe, at Jeremy's level and at Connor's level, now they're able to get help to go run the X30 classes. But there's no sponsorship below. If you had the teams getting constructor money, they could go and start helping guys before they get weeded out of the program. And the only good guys that have the money to put in for seat time are going to also have the money to go car racing as well. And we lose them at the end anyway. I mean, if you look at the succession program for the next Ryan or the next Marian Kremers, I don't know who that kid's going to be, because the only kids that are good enough right now to hang with you guys have the backing and the funding behind them and have only been in it that they're at 14, 15, 16 and senior. They're going to go do car racing because we've gotten the sport, at that level to have that kind of, I don't know, it costs so much to climb the ladder at this point that it's close to those guys over there. But if the teams did have a big constructors pool money, that would be strictly for kind of helping guys when they get to juniors, or at least when they go out of KA, because KA shouldn't just be a stepping stone to learn how to drive a go-kart. If you win a KA race, if you win a KA national championship, I think there's no question that you should get help to move up, into the X30 class. If you win a 206 national championship, you should get help to go run KA next year. That's how it should work. And if there was a constructor fund like that, or some way that was incentivized for guys to pull guys up, great, or at least enough people looking to fund guys in X30 that they'd go, all right, I'll bet on myself and go run X30 with the little bit I can muster for that year. But, the only kids that are even getting up to these pro classes, and the reason we're asking for these payouts is it's not sustainable outside of the handful that are there. There's no progression. There's no end to the ladder, and we can't just fix that by dropping down a class and making that class the new top of the ladder, because it still doesn't fix our root problem that we have in the sport as a whole right now.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think the thing for me is, the question is more, how do we incentivize people to want to go into X30 instead of how do we make a new pro class? I think the issue we're seeing right now is that drivers like Jeremy, like Connor, they don't see a path in karting anymore. There is like a stigma in racing. I mean, we all know it growing up that like anybody who you get in karting, all the kids are like, I want to be a Formula One driver. And then the Formula One becomes IndyCar. And as things get more realistic, they start dwindling it down. But then nobody is like, I want to be a professional go-kart driver. That doesn't exist. I had a conversation with Jeremy Shaw when I was in that position, and I was looking down on all these karting people and like, this is not the industry I want to be in, blah, blah, blah. And I remember talking to Jeremy Shaw, and he was like, it's okay. If you want to stay in karting, it's okay. You just got to make a way for yourself. And my dad said the same thing, and it was like, yeah, that's true. And I think, I mean, obviously I've been able to do that. I've been able to make, my living in karting. And now there's other drivers that are doing it as well. But I think that's the thing, is we've got to try and find a way so that there is a Mazda shootout for karting, like maybe at some point the series can help give enough money back or entry fees back to the series that RPG could do, an RPG shootout or something like that. Or some of these teams could be able to do a scholarship and move some drivers up from KA, because obviously a lot of these guys that are sponsoring drivers are taking it out of their pockets. I mean, all these guys are running a tight ship anyways. And your Mike Doty's, your Rawlistons, it's all coming out of their pocket. I mean, that's money they could have profited, and they're trying to grow their business. And I think if, even if the series maybe just doesn't hand them cash, but hands them ways that they legit have to spend it on racing, like entry fees, tires, fuel is paid for, in your constructors thing, but you got to use it on a new driver. I think you'd see a lot of series start using it, and maybe, other drivers will start seeing a path in karting, and maybe won't just move out of karting into cars at 14, because now, I mean, all these ladder series are just getting lower and lower and lower, and taking more karters out of it. I mean, so I think that's something, is trying to retain the guys, and that's the way that I think, maybe incentivizing the series to give something to the teams and incentivize the pro class.
Well, we've let's Tony, do you have more you wanted to build on that really quick?
No, I mean, actually, Ryan, I would say that's well said, buddy. But a lot of it also in the fact that you talk to constructors, I mean, there's a lot that, all of it could be done. But, that's all in the perfect world. You're talking about different manufacturers, tires. I mean, everybody kind of giving back to keep people there. I do agree in the fact that some of these kids, I mean, it's just the next, the faster they can get out of it, the moment they're out of junior and they get to senior. Let's say they do this, that, and the other. They do half a year or a year X30. Then next thing you know, they want to move them right on. It really doesn't make any sense. I mean, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a hard question to ask, and it's all one of those deals that it's not like it doesn't happen overnight for sure. But a lot of people just got to understand that there's more to it all than just trying to get to the next level. It's no different than Little League baseball or football or anything else growing up. I mean, you have different stages of it. You just don't move up because it's just due time, or oh man, I can buy a new a new baseball bat, so that means I got to go to the next level up or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just different. I don't know. It's hard to think about it all because it is a shame, because there's a lot of kids that honestly would make the sport. It'd be a lot more exciting, and you would be able to say the word pro class a little bit easier if some of them either stayed behind or not moving up next year, or just using that last year senior as, this is next year I'm doing blah blah blah, and this is just it is what it is, and I'm gonna roll with what I got.
Chris Wehrheim's back in the studio here.
Holy
Chris,
shit!
Do you want to explain a little bit of your situation? How we lost you for 10
Where's
minutes,
your
or do you
car,
want to keep
dude?
that one off?
Where's your car?
Listen,
You still in the car?
The car's, luckily I still have my car. Listen, 2 hands on the wheels, kids. No videoing, podcasting, driving. Okay, we'll just put it that way. 2 hands on the wheel, kids.
You're in Toronto. You hit something, jail.
No, I didn't hit anything, but I
Oh.
had someone pull up next to me that shook his hand, and I had to have a little talk for a couple
Did
minutes.
you say
so.
French? You know how they are. They say French over there. The fucking nobody knows what the fuck they say anyway.
We'll put that one in
Yeah.
the record books. For the first time ever, someone got pulled over by a cop. We just got to wait for someone to get arrested on happy hour, and we'll have the full bingo board fully checked off.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I know what's going to happen.
But, yeah, well, we had some good discussion while you were gone, Chris, while you were having a good discussion of your own. And Ryan had a good idea. Honestly, I hadn't heard of this one, Ryan, but I think this one's awesome. And you even got a little bit of love in the comment section for it. Again, so we had from Kevin Coleman. He said, hey, at what point do the entries kind of make K replace X30 as a pro class? And we were like, at least my point is like, it doesn't fix the problem if we just drop down to the next engine in line, whatever that engine is, and make that one a money class. But Ryan's idea I thought was good. And he's like, we're giving like little crumbs of money sometimes to K classes, to junior classes, to mini classes directly back to the entry. And it maybe makes the individual hurt a little bit less. But instead of that, having kind of a constructor's fund, whether it's team or manufacturer sorted, however you sort it, right? And the team gets that fund at the end of the year, but instead of it being just a big cash prize for the team, it's like in the form of entry fees meant to go and support and pick someone up from one of those stepping stone classes into X30 or into the next class up, right? So like if, a team that's got a really good, a couple really good cadet kids that are looking to go to juniors next year, win a bunch of races, instead of those kids winning a couple $100 on the weekend, they get money that goes to the team or to them some way or another. Ryan, you could elaborate a little bit more, but that was his thoughts on that, of trying to retain guys in and make it an actual pathway.
Yeah, I mean, the point is kind of like USF. I mean, they give out money. You're getting $300,000 if you win USF, but it only goes towards a team. But in this way, it'd be a little different, as the team would be the one, because that's ideally who you want to be in that position. You want them to be able to get more drivers and keep drivers in the sport. And so, yeah, I mean, interested to hear your thoughts.
No, I mean, I think I get the gist of it, and I think you're spot on. I know back when USPKS was first being formed, it wasn't exactly like that, but they were talking about some kind of prize fund that helped teams stay in this, go to the next race, or help teams keep drivers kind of in these pro categories. It never really came to fruition, but no, you're exactly right, Ryan. I mean, I maybe don't agree with some people that think that karting can become its own sport standalone. I always think it's going to be a gateway to car racing, but we should be doing everything that we can, like Tony said, to keep kids in the sport, another year longer, or to, get them to move up to the pro categories and not just stay in KA, especially some of these really talented kids that maybe don't have the funding to race as much, because they're out there. So that'd be awesome.
I think, and I think too, right? Like, to go off your point, Chris, there, and because there's people on both sides. There's lifetime karting lovers who want karting to be its own, believe it can. There's guys that look at it as strictly a ladder to cars, and I think the middle ground of it. I actually had this conversation with Eric Jones a few years ago back in Homestead when he was talking about how trying to. It's about probably 2017 or into 2018 when he was trying to work with USPKS to bring money back, because one of the multiple reasons USPKS had a major decline at the end of the 2016-2017 era was they removed all of the purse money from every single class, X30 and Yamaha, and then eventually KA, and they were going back in. And he's like, look, man, I'm trying to work on something where we can get maybe a 10K to win purse for the weekend. He's like, I know these kids are going to go to cars at the end of the day, but if I'm racing cars and I look at a go-kart race that cost me $3 or $4 to run and I could win 10, I'm still going to go run those go-kart races. And we're seeing that now be even more diversified than ever, I feel like, or at least more than it has in the last couple of decades on the NASCAR side, thanks to pioneers like Kyle Larson that'll go run sprint car races every single week, Stuart Friesen in the NASCAR Truck Series, that no matter what, if they still can make a little bit of money, or at least not lose their whole winnings from the NASCAR, scene, and go run all these other minor league races, around the country for local short tracks, they'll do it. And I think that's the right way we need to look at it, that karting can be both. There's no reason it can't be a launching pad to a car career if you're able to get the backing to go. That's awesome. If it's a sustainable pro level, it's never going to be to the level of a car, top tier F1 or NASCAR or any car series. But I think without question, it could get to, on the track of the Chili Bowl or local short track racing or the World of Outlaws series, where maybe you have a pro series that runs from October to December, or pro events there, or you look at the Winter Tour season where it's outside the IndyCar season. Those guys aren't mad, or the events are weekly or what have you. But if it's sustainable, those kids will run. And we've had kids like that on the show. Braden Eves is a prime example, who's one of our founding guys on at Happy Hour. He loves go-kart racing. Christian Brooks loves go-kart racing. They're really good go-kart guys. They would run every U.S. national that would let them if it's outside their contract, and they didn't have to shell out $10,000 to do it, And that's why we push for this stuff.
Xander, actually back in the day, and this is, I'd say it's probably early 90s, it was very normal for guys at the highest level of Formula A and Formula Super A, their last year or their first year into car racing, to still race a full season of karting, because they were factory driver. They were getting paid to race go-karts, and they also raced Formula 3 or Formula Vauxhall or whatever that first year of car racing for them. But I know Fisichella raced karts and cars. A lot of guys did. So that used to happen actually quite a bit. It just doesn't happen as much, or really at all, really anymore.
Gotcha. Tony, you look like you got something to say. What do you got?
No, in the end, though, effectively, if you guys are talking about like the word pro class, right? So the word pro, really effectively at the national level, whether it be USPKS or SCUSA, that is kind of your pro version of go-karting. It's not like, look, by the time you guys are done, streaming it and announcing it, and, if there was, prize money at every level, not meaning, senior all the way to, mini or micro, whatever. But if you consider, let's say the two senior classes are, that's the top level of what you're doing at a national race. Well, you're not going to get, let's say it's $5,000 to win a KA and $7,500 to win X30 or whatever that number may be. You're not going to go to, a Texas, sprint series or whatever, SSKC or whatever it is, and win that kind of money. Effectively, if you're there and you're at the top level, you made it up through all those ranks, and essentially that is your pro level of racing. Like, you don't get any top level more than that anywhere in the U.S. If
besides the national racing, and how many races, do you do a year that are that way, depending on whatever series you pick. Let's say you do both, that's still less racing that you would do at your regional level. So effectively it is a pro class because you got there by getting up through all the ranks. It's no different than the rest of, pro sports out there, or, amateur pro sports or whatever. You still have to go up that ladder. Once you're there, if you pay X to KA senior and X to X30, or, if they don't have a shifter class, or let's say you include the KZ in it or whatever, it's still, that is your pro level of what the weekend consists of. The pro level isn't micro or mini or junior or whatever. It's what you move up towards. So I don't know. I think of it much differently. Once you get to that point, you are the elder of being there. Maybe it took you 8 years to get there because you went through all the classes. Well, dude, that's still 8 years of your life, and you still did more regional than you did national.
Yeah, and sorry, Chris, Masters is not part of our pro structure and may not be that for a little while.
Unless you're at Vegas. You need to give away money for Vegas. And you need to get your ass in the seat, too, because I heard a lot of people are going.
Going what? Going where?
Masters Vegas, baby.
KA Masters in Las Vegas.
Dude, give me a break.
Come on.
First of all, no, I'll be joining my boy Sarah, so, and a few others.
All right.
I ain't racing no KA on hard tires.
Dude,
this was a good point too. Jim Mayer in the comment section. Jim, I want to give you a shout out. I've seen you kind of beat this drum a few times over the last few years, and I think it's a good point too. So his point is basically like we have so many different individual kart brands that ever since they all become importers, there's so many brands, none of them are big enough to support guys, right? Like over in Europe, there's a handful of big factories, even though they run the different outfits like OTK, Brell, CRG that can support them. But in the States, there's only so many dealers for these guys. I don't know how you fix this right here. I think it's a good point that we have so many different kart brands. Magic's only got maybe a couple dealers, GFC, couple dealers, and those are bigger of the independent brands, to even get to a point where like the chassis are supplying guys. I mean, if it's open, they're not big enough, but I don't know how you fix that one. That's like Moto. There's like only 6.
You can't.
Yeah, but
spirit of the sport, dude, you can't take that away.
Yeah.
No,
we
but,
also.
sorry. No, go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I was just saying that we have about 5 brands. They're just different names for it. I think what we need to see is, and I don't know if we'll ever get to this point, is the actual manufacturers pushing harder in the States. And at least Burrell and CRG seem to be doing it. They're both, Burrell's sending over their guys, their top guys to push harder in the States. And there are supporting people. It is their guys. It's not Americans. So, but they are obviously making a push, and you see CRG is obviously making a push as well in the States. And so, I don't think you're ever going to get the full support of the Europeans because that's just not the way they are. But I think the way that it would be better is that the series, the manufacturer give it to these major teams that run their stuff, and then they can then take that money and spend it on a driver, because that's how Burrell does it. Burrell, when I was with PSL, they give them a lump sum to spend on a driver for the year, and then they'd sponsor somebody and use that for their stuff. So I would like to see other manufacturers do that same thing.
Yeah, when I raced for Top Kart, it was the same way. We were, Top Kart kind of gave Graham Products a certain amount of money to spend on drivers, whether or not it was actual money or whether or not it was paying for entries and travel and all that. They were given, amount of money to sponsor a driver. But I also think some of these teams can just be smarter about how they run their teams, and they can hire a driver like Austin or like Ryan and build the team around that and the coaching and everything. And Ryan, the reason why he's a professional is, for the most part, is because Raleigh saw a different way to run a business, and you can see the benefits of it. You can really correlate his success with when Ryan came on board, so other teams can do the same thing. They can hire a professional top level driver, and we can create more professionals in the sport that way.
Right. And we talk about that a little on the show, Ryan, but walk us through your day. I mean, you spend how much percentage wise, break up your day on a race day, what you do, how much of that day is you sitting at the video table and how much of that day is sitting focusing on your own driving?
I would say, it's 50-50. I mean, there's a balance. Obviously we've run into issues where it was too much one way or the other. And I think 2020 was one of those years where, the first year I came with the team, I was more focusing on my driving, and not so much the team stuff, helping out drivers here and there. But we had, somebody doing data, specifically for the seniors. So I was just kind of floating, helping out with the drivers and setups and stuff. But 2020 was one of those things where it became like a 75-25, where the entire time I was back, I was strictly doing data, strictly working the entire time and not really focusing on the racing. And we did see a decline in the results. I mean, my head wasn't totally there all the time. And so then we made a switch and we got, that's why Cedric Lupien's with the team for Maul, because we see the value in having these drivers. That's what I've been really happy with, because the way I've been positioning myself in the sport and the way I've talked to some of these teams, it's allowed other drivers to take advantage of it as well. And that's why it's nice that we have Cedric Lupien, because it shows the value in having a driver help other drivers on the racetrack as well as doing data, because having somebody on the track doing data versus somebody just doing data is a different thing. And that's why Danny's on the team. And I think, other teams are starting to see it. Speed does have Austin. Austin is working for Speed, and they see the value in it too. And they're starting to build that program around Austin, and they're bringing Paulie in as well. And same with PSL, they brought in Marin, and they're bringing in, other drivers, because they're starting to see the value in that. And that's kind of where I was going with the whole thing is, let's start trying to give those teams more in some way so that they can keep seeing it. And, there's a lot of these drivers that, growing up, we all see it, all these drivers that kind of just don't have the funds to get out of the sport, or they go to cars and then they're just done because they're like, well, there's no sense in going back to karts. There's a lot of this talent that just gets washed out or just brushed under the table because of the funds and stuff. And that would be an amazing place for some of these teams to be like, I see the value in having this guy on my team, maybe a smaller team, and bringing them on as a driver, somehow winning some of the funds or something, and getting that to bring a driver back and push a driver in the sport. I think that's obviously the ideal thing for me.
We had let's see, one more here. We'll take here. This one's from asking. This is, I don't know. So asking, yeah, off the bat, Chris says this is asking if the Miami Series USPKS and SCUs would work together to create a true X30 Pro division with which help retain drivers the larger purse for the pro class. So that would be like, I'm guessing he's talking like a combined X30 championship that would cross over the two series, which is kind of how we promote the season. We'd like to say on KC stuff that there's like 15 majors in the year. You have the Florida Winter Tour and the Rock Stuff in Rock Vegas for 4. You have 6 SCUs events between the SCUs Winter Series, SCUs Pro Tour, Supernats. You have 4 USPKSs, and then you have Miami Grands to make up 15. So the short answer, as Chris said, probably not. I think there's enough ego. Well, ego is not a nice word to say.
Two different promoters, man. It's 2 different series. You can't.
But I honestly just don't understand why we've gone down so many years, and it's annoying. It's so boring now. Like, you have 2 series that do the exact same thing with practically the exact same format, exact same categories. It's like, dude, can someone just do something different finally? It does kind of get like a little. Every race I go to, I'm like, can we just have something different? It's like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah. We are running about the same. I'm sure everyone feels the same when we go into these events. Thursday practice, Friday practice, Saturday's a race day, Sunday's a race day. It's the same for both of them. There's a test weekend before.
That's what made the Grand Nats last year so exciting, right? Because there was some difference. Yeah, it wasn't, first year, so it wasn't like exactly perfect because, maybe some people don't like the track or whatever. But dude, I'll tell you, out of all the stuff I did last year, one of my real favorite times was those 2 shootout races.
100%.
it was way cool, man. I mean, it was just, I don't know, man. I mean, it was all adrenaline based. It was done by the minute. Like, shit was all going, and it was just good. Like, it was, I don't know, it was fun.
That's why I think there needs to be a series at some point. I've talked about it before, that isn't the status quo. And I've spoken about professional karting, but something that comes up that prioritizes a show over a moneymaker, which I know is difficult because obviously the reason it's the same way it's always been is because that's what produces the most money. But if there is something that comes along where, it's for the show, which was what the whole Miami Grands was about, was the show. I mean, it was the excitement of not knowing what layout you're going to run, the excitement of, having 10 minutes in between sessions to change anything. If you crash something, you have 10 minutes. And I think that was what drew everybody to it more than the actual race itself. I mean, the shootout was what was the big selling card of the whole thing. And so I think if a series did come along and somehow found a way to maybe get a title sponsor to make up for the lack of funds that the entry fees will do, and created a series where it is a show, and not necessarily gimmicky, but that's more exciting for the drivers. I think that would be something amazing for the sport.
Stars of Karting had the Snap-on Tools as a sponsor, and Chris, you might know the answer. I don't know if you do. Tony and I didn't. Do you know how they got some of their major sponsors? I know Bobby Rahal was behind with the Formula BMW for CKI, but I don't know how Stars got some of their big sponsors in the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Zalu, who ran Stars, was very good at it. And, I think a little bit of it was just a little bit different outlook. I mean, honestly, I know Mark Coates from USPKS has worked a long time trying to get some outside money, and he has gotten some outside money. It's hard, though. I mean, it's no different than trying to sell sponsor in USF. It's you have to really pinpoint what you're selling. And I think I've actually had some conversations with Tony Saragusa, and he, some of these businessmen that have successful businesses outside of karting, and they have actually some really good ideas. Like, perfect example, selling sponsorship to like a rental van company or rental car companies. I think sometimes we maybe shoot for too much money, and that's why it's hard to get that sponsorship. But if you really kind of bring some of these people in and invite them into an event and see what it's all about and the products that are being used and how they're being used, I think we could pull in some outside money, but like Ryan said, we would have to change how we run these events. It would have to be more inviting to bring outside people to the track, right? It shouldn't cost a family, $30 to $60 a person to come to a go-kart race. There should be an area that is free, and it's crazy to me still that we don't have an area that, like, Newcastle's a perfect example. You should be able to walk into the cafe, walk to that first fence line where the grandstands are, and watch for free, right? The series can do some deal to where they make money on alcohol being sold, soft drinks, food being sold, whatever, so they could at least get their cut. But it's insane to me that, you're paying $60 to essentially see an unknown sport to a lot of people.
I think even more than that, I've told, I think I told Mark Coates this with USPKS, but I mean, Newcastle has that big cafe building, but GoPro doesn't. I mean, they have the tent down on the grid. But if you're what these sponsors want to see, well, there's a good point about the rental car companies or maybe airlines or like cell servers or something that everybody that's going there already uses. At the end of the day, if we're going to put on a show, you can see it in our viewership numbers. It's a couple thousand. It's not 10,000, not 100,000. And that won't change if you put it on CBS Sports and you get that inflated number of it being on a TV in a bar. People don't know what it's talking about. The views being for karting versus the views just because they were flipping through the channel and it counts as a view doesn't count, in my opinion. But what these events need to be looking at, if I'm a promoter right now and I'm going to Newcastle, I'm looking at Newcastle and saying, all right, Newcastle has 10 different touring events that come through it. Or GoPro with a club series that's as big as a national, they've got 12 events. Okay, I know that I'm going to get my piss pass money from the dad, maybe the mom, and the driver. But, I want to get the next level. And I think the next level isn't racing fans yet. I think the next level is extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters that wouldn't come to every single race, but they might come to one. And if we're talking about coming to one, putting on a show, great. The X30 shootout was awesome to watch. If you wanted to watch the racing, that's awesome. But let's talk about what the other half of the paddock sees that isn't under the RPG tent or the Speed Concepts racing tent that are top-level flagship operations that have a hospitality section. You don't. Flight straight out. There is nowhere. If I showed up right now, my mom has been to only 3 go-kart races. 2 of them were kart chaser events where she came to see the broadcast because at least then she'd get a little more access and kind of see what was going on. The one event she came to was a local club race in Atlanta, one of the only club races in my home state that I ever did. And that was at least a nice facility at the time that had bathrooms and a decent little viewing area. It would not cost a lot. We rent these wedding tents anyway with these big companies for teams to get a big wedding tent, cornhole, ping pong, catered snacks throughout the day, a water cooler, some place for these families to hang
screen
out.
So where people can see, like at Vegas, that's like amazing for these guys. I mean,
it
I remember Lancaster was, it doesn't have to, but I'm saying that adds so much because there's, a seating area, good seating area, like get some grandstands in so where people can actually watch the races. Like, I think you can't watch races at any of these tracks.
Yeah, but that's for sure. I mean, and Chris can kind of vouch on this as well. I mean, when you go to some of those European races, it doesn't matter if it's a CIK race or a WSK race. It could be a DKM race. You can go to any of these races. The only people that are required to have bans are people that enter Park from 8 or the grid, which is fenced off. At that point, everybody else, you just roam around. You can literally walk in there and do whatever you want. You can bring 100 people there and they all watch. And they have cafes and they have this and they have that.
Yep.
Well, all that came about is because there were so many people there. Those people were going to spend their money somewhere. So in the end, it turns it into like a Sunday at the park or a Saturday at the park or, everyone.
You see it in South Garda every year. You see it. I mean, every time I went, it was like Sunday. That little grandstand got full. And there's people. I mean, they go drink beers and have a good time.
They're having a good time. They're hanging out. Their kids are watching. Then the kids are out playing around. They're doing whatever. There's playground. There's a lot to all that it brings people there to kind of see what it is. Whether they do it or not, who cares? It just makes the sport, family friendly. Like that's kind of what you want. You can go watch a little league baseball game anywhere in the country. And you don't have to. You can just sit in the grandstand. You don't even like baseball, and you can go sit there.
Yeah. It's about making the sport more accessible, right? Like, not that we're a country club sport, but it sometimes does feel like we're a country club sport. Like the access to just to come check it out is hard. It's really hard to go check out a high-level karting event anywhere in North America.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean. It'll take it would take angel investor or someone that really wants to put that money down because there is going to be a drop off to kind of take those past money away from the series. And we're talking at this point like 20-30K of excess bans they might lose.
Xander, what past money?
Exactly.
You have the past money that you're going to get from the people that are already going to every event. All you're saying is open it up for the people that aren't showing up. Right. Like that's not your losing money. That's money that you could be making more money, but you're not making less money.
No.
Right.
You're going to make the same amount of money if people are like, man, I don't want to spend $60 to bring my 3 kids in there or whatever it may be. Or it'd be the same amount of money if they get to the door and they're like, oh, $60 for my 3-year-olds or whatever the hell they got. They're going to turn around and walk away anyway. So you don't get that $60 either way.
But they'll spend 120.
They're paying their own anyway.
Yeah, and then they'll spend $120 on food and drinks if they're having a great time. And if you're taking a cut of that from the track, what's the difference? You're making money. You're making that money back.
It's a shift. Like you said though, and like Ryan said, the tracks need to get structured that way where we've got a free section because none of them are laid out in any way for it.
Correct.
I mean, to get, let's look at GoPro IME Grands. That is the best show race that we have seen in the last decade. That facility is an amazing facility, but it's the worst facility laid out if you wanted to get a fan in there somewhere. I mean, I don't know how you would have to probably rent like a ton of like temp fencing at that paddock gate, and then they would have to walk along the outside of the fence maybe to get around to the front, because they can't go on that side hill, they can't go around, like they have to go through the paddock. And that and the insurance side, oh man, we got porn bots. Oh, we made it so close.
Porn bot. What the fuck is a porn bot?
Man,
we don't need to discuss that.
We're gonna leave that off. No, we do these live streams, and then we've been noticing on every live stream we get these freaking bots trying to send people to porn sites. And sorry to the kids watching at home, but man, whatever. Anyway, so yes, this is. Well, here's this. So this is the liability question, Kyle Kraus. So. The liability is part of the reason they use as the crutch for the insurance. And so if you're going to have beer sales during the day, which is the biggest moneymaker at any motorsports race in the world when it comes to concessions, right? And of course, if you want to not have to charge anything, you've got to section them off from the paddock. They can't be in anywhere that team part is or go-kart part is. Newcastle, at least, that has room to have a free section, but nowhere else does. But my point where I was going is like, okay, you're paying $65 for access to this event, but if you're pitting out of a pickup truck, like you're not really getting $65 worth, and you're paying for that parking space anyway. So we're talking for like sponsors to spend $4 or $5 grand a weekend to get like a nice hospitality tent with one person to man it or two people to man it and offering like some refreshments and food. Like, I think that's something that the right thing, don't get me wrong, is to have a free section or have like a very low cost section that sells beer and is a good spectator section. That's the right way to go. I don't disagree with you guys there. That's where we should be going. That's where all these events should be looking if you want it to be a show. But I think right now, this would not be a shock to the system for the events to have one of the prime front row pit spaces, because at the end of the day, we push our carts 10 minutes to the grid early anyway. The microfield does it 30 minutes before. We don't got to be right up on the front damn row. Give up one of those front row spots. Put a nice rental wedding tent there. Ping pong, cornhole, whatever free games you want, tables to sit down. I mean, you look at any, the Homestead Miami Speedway, when they host NASCAR, not only do they have the grandstands there and they have all the vendors around, but they rent like 20 by 20 or 40 by 20, like tents we use at the track, just for like shade stations, just to sit down and get some shade. I mean, if a mom or a dad and they're not under a big team can't, it pits on their own, unless they bring their own tents and pay for more pit space, there's no place for them to sit and hang out, because we're hanging out for 4 hours between these sessions. That was what I think these guys should do right now. Now they're, going to having a really cheap or free section to bring fans or family in. I mean, in Europe, at least, like you said, Tony and Chris, I mean, it's free over there, but they're not nearly as sue happy as the damn United States is. True. So that's part of the reason that stuff can happen. And Matt Langford's brought up in our comment section before about, how the CIK races, they're offset by all the safe driving, teens for safe driving, whatever funds the CIK FIA Academy series, the crazy money they get from the governments for I can't remember what the damn name of the charity's called.
Yeah, but a lot of that stuff is all like it's built into the track and the facilities. I mean, that has nothing to do with CIK. And I mean, you can go to a DKM or a smaller race, and you go to some of these tracks, and they have a cafe open. They have a place to hang out. They have you go to Sarno. There's a playground. There's a pool. Like, it's just the way it's looked at it a lot. Perfect example. If anyone watched the Kart Master series. Or a Kart Masters event from, I think it was last weekend. They talked a lot about how they keep reinvesting into the track and creating an atmosphere. And I've been lucky enough to go to Kart Masters 3 times and be at PFI a few times other than that. And that is single-handedly the best facility there is probably in the world when it comes to putting on an event and creating an atmosphere for people to have things to do other than just sit at their tent or go watch a go-kart race. There's other things to do. And I think, we need to maybe put more pressure on these events or these tracks that national series go to reinvest in their tracks a little bit. Right. And maybe the tracks that aren't reinvesting into their facilities, maybe we need to go find some tracks that are investing in their facilities and say, hey, the series wants to spend their money and put their money with these tracks that are, looking out for the sport as well.
I agree. I think too, the tracks the way you fix that is these tracks got to get off a fixed rate with the series. There needs to be some rev share, and we talk about fixing the model a little bit. I mean, money drives everything. That's if we bro back to the root of all of our problems and how we fix them, right? We've got some ideas to fix them that are going to be financially feasible and profitable. All the events, all the series promoters go to these tracks with flat rates. I mean, Ryan, you talk with Andre at Orlando, you know the deal, and we've talked about this off stream a lot, but it's a flat rate for that track. Why would that track put money in when they make more on the rentals, or in general, they don't get any benefit to putting the money in? So they need to get in on pass money, whatever it is, and I think you could get that. But at least this year, how it's come together, you can say whatever, but, Sean Bailiff and the MCC Cincinnati group, they've spent a lot of money making that track nice, and that track's getting a date next year. And that's how it should go, right? Like, track puts in money, track upgrades their facilities. They're hoping to have a nice viewership facility or viewership building and media building on the front straightaway by the time PKS rolls around next year, which would be badass.
Dude, being there as much as I was last year, and then going there a couple of weeks ago and seeing the way that track races, and then understanding what they're going to do, and then understanding like all the viewing areas and a lot of what the plans are, man, that place will be serious by next year. They are making it a real family oriented place, just so moms and their maybe younger siblings of whoever may be racing have something to do, and that's it just makes it a whole weekend for the whole family, and that's kind of what it's about anyway, right?
Absolutely. Ryan, you look like you're a little bit tired. I feel like
no. I was just getting texts. I was responding. I hadn't responded to people in like an hour, so I was trying to respond.
But yeah, it's been good. I don't know. All right, well, Chris, let's we're almost at the 2-hour mark, so I'm gonna cut us off a little bit here tonight. But I think we've got more to discuss without you getting pulled over in the middle of a show. And Gary Carlton, maybe we give a shout out to old GFC, see if he'd come on. He'd be a great guy to talk about Spec versus CIK style engines versus somewhere in the mix of letting guys tune on them a little bit more. Maybe we do that for a little bit. Would you be down to bring back for another show to talk more engine specific stuff? Kick Ryan out?
Oh yeah, I'd definitely be down to talk with Gary about the differences and how we can maybe evolve our programs here.
All right, well, let's go around the horn. We'll give closing thoughts on all this stuff here. Tony, you got any closing thoughts? Why don't you kick us off? Of all the topics we've said tonight, anything you want to leave the viewers with before we get out of here?
What do you want me to say?
I don't know. Anything you want to say?
I thought I commented on all the topics just fine.
I thought you behaved yourself really well tonight, Tony. I'm honestly proud of you.
This was a good night. This was a good night for Tony.
Yeah, great night for Tony.
Exactly. I was late to it, but yeah, I'm good. I was actually... This whole area is like known for like roosters roaming around the streets. I was trying to find a rooster to show you guys, but I think they're in the back apartment, so I was gonna wait for that.
My dad wanted to know: are you getting honked at up there? Because he said
no. Let me show you what it is. I'll show you why. So this is. Hold on. Let me figure out how to fucking turn this around. How do I turn this around?
I don't know if you can, Tony.
All right. Well, here. That's because it's just this all night long, nonstop. See the roosters? They're known for the roosters. Don't ask how I ended up here. This is just a stepping stone. But I love this place. It's good. This apartment I always end up in.
Well, thanks for coming on, Tony. Here, Ryan, closing thoughts for the fans tuning in.
I mean, I said a lot tonight, but yeah, let's try and keep this going. I mean, my goal with the sport is obviously to grow it, keep drivers in it, and show people that, don't, write off karting too early in your career. Somebody that did write it off, it's become my livelihood, and it's the thing that I love to do the most. So, don't write it off, because if you love doing it, you should keep doing it.
Chris, closing thoughts?
No, thanks for having me on, and looking forward to getting back on the show with you in the near future.
Sounds good. Aaron, I know I had you quiet a little bit here tonight because this was a big learning night for both of us. What did you take away?
Dude, I am so far out of my element. I mean, you look behind me, there are 3 trophies up there. I ran USPKS last year on like a $2,000 a year budget. I am not qualified to be in this discussion whatsoever. But it was K. It wasn't X. I wasn't trying to run X. It was K. It was like $2,000 a weekend. It was really, not qualified to be here, but it was a lot of, like I said, like learning stuff. I really agree with, we need to build better, more accessible for the general public facilities. There needs to be situations where the tracks or we have something at the tracks for people to be at. I think that's good. We had a lot of good discussions that I think was really helpful. I'm not gonna be able to recall 2 hours of it, but I liked a lot, and I was just happy to be here.
Sweet. Well, with that, guys. With that, we will send you guys off here. Good night. Thank goodness we were able to keep Ryan past his normal Chick-fil-A time at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Closed now, so thanks for that.
Oh, come on.
Good. That's you anyway, dude. You got to stop eating all that shit.
Get in the mechanic's belly.
Yeah. We're working on it. Yeah, sport's going to get big, and you aren't going to be fit enough to run in it anymore. At least maybe that's what everybody's hoping for. Maybe Ryan gets too fat, can't win Supernats 25. We'll find out. We'll be back with more stuff next week. Shout out again to the Pacific Northwest with the Tri-Cities Kart Club. Awesome entry for you guys. We can't be there. Wish you guys the best of luck over there. The Stars Championship Series goes to New Jersey next week. We'll have a little bit of a preview on that, so I don't know when we'll get that engine discussion. Maybe we do it next week. Maybe we do a good week when we get a few more engine guys on here. And I did see a comment earlier from Howie Idelson talking about that they had a dedicated sponsorship guy from the CIK Stars at Karting. So homework for me to do, homework for hopefully everyone, that we can give you guys some more stuff to talk about. And it's been fun playing armchair quarterback here all night. For everyone on the show, for Aaron Hackmeister, for myself, Xander Clements, thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you guys next week.